We are possibly 24 hours from knowing who will be president of the United States of America in 2025, or we could be talking about this in 7 days, 10 days, 70 days. I don't know what is going to happen, but to help me go through this and other big stories, I have Seamus Bruner. Seamus, thank you so much for joining me again.
Hey, Stephen, it's great to be with you. Yeah, it's exciting times. Hopefully we get the results soon, but there's plenty of reasons to think we won't get them soon, and that's really unsettling.
It is, and I want to go through those with you. You know, last election cycle, you probably noticed, like I did, Donald Trump, we all went to bed with him up very high in many of the most important states, and we wake up the next day to Joe Biden magically winning, somehow becomes president, losing 18 of the 19 bellwether states, or counties, many other shenanigans. But you guys have put out a report as people today are in line voting. I want them to keep their eyes vigilant, but I wanted to go through this list of this report that you've put out, the top 50 threats, ways that there could be cheating in the 2024 election. Let me switch over to the threats themselves. So you guys lay this out, dark money and foreign influence, lawfare operations, GOTV operations, voter fraud, and election fraud. I've got up here on the screen the 50. Which of these are you guys most concerned with, or are you concerned with this being all 50 of them playing a role in this election?
Yeah, well, all 50 are certainly going to play a role in this election. We started out this report by just making a list. What are all the things that we find sort of suspicious or wrong, or what makes our elections insecure? And it's the obvious things, of course, like mass mail-in ballots, and some of these get out the vote operations are certainly shady. No voter ID, no proof of citizenship. And then as the list developed, we found that there were 5 categories that one of these 5 categories, most threats to our election fall into. And so the dark money, that's a huge one. And one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough in the dark money and influence category is the undisclosed in-kind contributions. That would be when Google censors results. And so let's say you search for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, and all you get are positive Harris and negative Trump articles. That's a donation of sorts. I mean, it's an almost incalculably valuable donation. That swings 10%, maybe more percent of the voters one direction or another. Those are election swinging numbers. I would say that possibly the largest threat, and they're all interrelated in many ways, is the non-citizen voting. We have found that it is exceedingly easy for non-citizens to get onto the voter rolls. And in some states like Arizona, it's almost impossible to get them off of the rolls. There was just a story out of Ohio the other day, how a non-citizen, a Chinese man, was able to cast a ballot in Ohio, and they can't even get the vote disqualified. So that vote will count. That's going to happen all over the country, especially in swing states. And why do we view this as such a big risk? Well, 10 million plus non-citizens have found their way into the country since Biden and Harris took office. And, if we're talking 10,000 here, 10,000 there voting, small fraction of the total amount, those are election swinging numbers. We know, like you mentioned, there were just 5 cities where, the count gets shut down overnight. We're talking Atlanta, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit, and others. Phoenix, Arizona is another one of these cities with these huge counting centers, and technical difficulties or water pipes breaking caused the count to stop. That's a huge threat. The count cannot stop until the results are known. And here's why it matters when the count stops, is that's when the shenanigans take place. All of the election monitors, all of the bipartisan, nonpartisan people watching, the election watchers, they go home, the journalists go home, and then you see the videos that come out of, they resume the count. They start feeding the ballots into the machines again. That's a problem. So we could probably spend the whole time on this, but I'll happy to talk about what else you'd like to talk about here.
Yeah. Do you believe that the Zuckerbucks which weren't really talked about until after the 2020 election, do you believe that those played a large role? For those that don't know, it came out after the election that Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, for some undisclosed reason, decides to give $400 million to the elections, and 90% of that money goes towards getting Joe Biden elected in swing states and in certain swing cities with drop boxes and different things. Did that have a huge shift in the election?
Yeah, it plays a major role. It's something that we can't accept, can't allow. Now, I will say that Zuckerbucks, a lot of states, it's good news. A lot of states have banned them. I believe it's around 26 states, but not every state. And just because the state bans the Zuckerbucks doesn't mean that the local jurisdictions, the counties, let's say Fulton County, which is Atlanta, or in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, some of these counties are still accepting Zuckerbucks, which is totally wrong, but it takes years to litigate. And what Zuckerbucks really are is the private funding of public election infrastructure. So Mark Zuckerberg poured, like you said, over $400 million, and all of that money, most of it, flowed to blue jurisdictions. So these swing cities, swing counties, and then they use that money, these counties, to put drop boxes in predominantly blue neighborhoods. So it's harder for Republicans to get their ballots to the drop box, but Democrats have a drop box every other block. That's just an example that multiple investigations confirmed. And so we can't have this. And we've talked about this before, Stephen. These are called public-private partnerships. This is what the control oligarchs who we've talked about are all in favor of, where private corporations handle certain aspects so that they get all of the benefits of, no FOIA, no transparency, and they get kind of the clandestine side of the private part of the relationship, but then they get the power of the government to implement things. And so big tech does this a lot. They partner with the government. These public-private partnerships, which is really the brainchild of people like Klaus Schwab, that is a huge problem. It's going to be a problem in this 2024 election, and it's something that we need to keep our eyes on.
Okay. Let me, I'm going to pull up the swing states here. This is the most up-to-date polling that we have. Of course, a lot of the pollsters, they're now putting out their final predictions. There's no more rallies happening. Maybe there's ads, maybe there's signs, but right now, these are the main states here on the screen. We have Arizona predicting Trump 2.1, plus 2.1. Pennsylvania just barely squeaking by positively, 0.7. Georgia, 0.5 above for Trump. North Carolina, 0.4 above for Trump. Wisconsin, 0.3. Nevada, 0.1. And then Michigan going to Kamala Harris. We'll see if these last two big endorsements from the Muslim and Arab American community can sway Michigan voters, or even Muslim and Arab voters around the entire United States, as Trump being the one that will bring peace to the Middle East. What do you think of? I've been having a hard time making sense of all of these different polls, because if you're looking at like Reuters, ABC, CNN, a lot of those are still highly favoring Kamala Harris, although CNN has been open about her favorability being too low, the fact that she is seen as an incumbent president with a 3.5-year negative track record. What are your thoughts on these swing states and these polls?
Yeah, well, I've never personally been polled. I've never had my cell phone called. I feel like the polling, the methods for polling are pretty antiquated, where they call people up. I mean, you get a big sampling bias for the type of person who wants to answer the phone. So it's hard to put stock in these. And Donald Trump talked about this on the Joe Rogan podcast. Probably the most reliable form of polling is the internal polling, the one that the campaigns pay millions and millions of dollars for to actually find out where their resources are needed. Most of the time, you don't see any of that polling unless it's positive. So, it's hard to trust that unless, sometimes it's just meant to show, it's a media fixture. Putting polls out is this kind of this horse race thing where the media will put out polls. The great Rush Limbaugh always said polls are not meant to gauge public opinion. They're meant to sway public opinion. And now we have this new type of thing with the Predict It and the different betting markets. I don't find those particularly reliable either because let's say you're a Donald Trump supporter, you want to hedge your bets so that if Donald Trump loses, you still get some cash out of it. So you would actually place a bet on Kamala Harris. You don't think the elections are particularly secure. So some of the people who've made $20 million bets, I would say that they actually believe that that person is going to win. But it's hard to say in the betting markets if someone is betting as a hedge or because they actually believe the person's going to win.
One of the biggest damages done under Biden and Kamala Harris has been the destruction of the US dollar. I hate to say this, but the US dollar has lost 26% of its buying power. You feel it and I feel it. Meanwhile, inflation is out of control and the cost of everything is up. But so is gold and silver. Think about this. If you had to bet on gold or the US dollar and where it will be 20 years from now, are you betting on gold or are you betting on the US dollar? For me, I know historically gold is going to go up. Let the experts at Colonial Metals Group help you and your family. Their professionals can help educate you on the history of gold, the value of gold, and how to put it into a self-directed IRA. So whether you own a 401k or an IRA and you're looking to shelter some of your money from exposure to the market or the US dollar, or whether you're brand new, or maybe mom and dad have asked you to help them be better at protecting their money as we go into the future, Colonial Metals Group can help. Now we've put together a special offer. Reach out to them and learn about gold and silver. And you could get a safe as well as up to $7,500 in free silver. Just let them know that you came from the Stephen Gardner Show. Now, you can call them at 800-807-2143 or reach out with the link below, colonialmetalsgroup.com/Stephen-Gardner. All right, let's get back to that interview. Yeah, good point. Let me put this back on the screen. Okay, so this is 𝐃𝐨𝐰𝐥𝐥. And they have been showing Donald Trump highly favored. And then about a week ago, out of nowhere, Kamala Harris ripped back into basically 50-50 territory. And then after a couple of big interviews like Joe Rogan, Kamala Harris skipping Joe Rogan, and then this scandal with the FCC where they didn't allow Donald Trump on their network, but they allowed Kamala Harris to do an SNL skit in front of, 20, 30, 40, 50 million people. These are also kind of hard to weigh. Now, I've heard that these are a lot more reliable because people are putting their money where their mouth is. But do you think that these are, 100% fail safes, or does it all just come down to if people are willing to bet on the person they believe will win, or maybe they bet the opposite. So they vote Trump, but they vote Kamala just in case? Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, again, I mean, I don't hold a lot of stock in any of these things. I mean, it's a good kind of weather vane to see which way the winds are blowing, but they can be gamed. I mean, as the betting markets play a bigger and bigger role in determining who's going to win, there's a bigger and bigger incentive to game those betting markets. So if you put $20 million on Kamala and all of a sudden it says she's favored to win, does that actually mean that the entire country has switched and starts believing that Kamala is going to win? Or is it just because a handful of whales have put their money on her? And so it's really hard to say. I mean, I wouldn't want to say one way or the other, but I don't put a whole lot of stock in it. I think it's all of these things, the confluence of factors from the betting markets to the polling, to just kind of, like what you see at the rallies. I mean, with the enthusiasm, Axios ran a story actually that said there's a big enthusiasm gap. It's hard to believe that, meaning they say Kamala has far more enthusiasm. When you look at the rally crowd sizes, which seems to be a pretty good indicator actually, that people are showing up, they're taking time out of their busy day to go watch one candidate or the other speak. You know, the Kamala rallies, they all have big celebrities. Like they're going to watch let's say a Beyonce concert, and they sort of gamed their supporters on that side by saying that Beyonce was going to perform. A lot of people were upset that she didn't actually perform. So I would put just as much stake in rally crowd sizes as I would in betting markets.
Okay, interesting. The only reason I look at those is a lot of the polling data in 2020 had Joe Biden and Donald Trump neck and neck. And I didn't know about the betting market. It was actually a guy over on the Patrick Bet David podcast. He pointed out, he said, you know, the gambling websites showed Joe Biden in favor, even though the polls were neck and neck. This time around, you know, it's showing Donald Trump with a double-digit lead. But I guess at the end of the day, I can't remember who says this. Polls don't matter, people matter. And so we got to get out. Although I will say, you know, a lot of the data, according to Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, Steve Bannon, others, they are saying that Republicans are voting early like we've never seen before. And yet the polling data shows that there are still a large number of Republicans that plan to cast their vote the day of. So I don't know